Hey YouTube, wanted to do an unboxing for my progressive shocks for my 95 Harley Davidson Ultra Glide, and I bought some progressive suspension shocks. As you can see, I opted to go for the stock length shock to get the best possible ride. I ride a lot of 2-up, so I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable as well as the passenger. And I can show you the part number here. Should be able to see that. These are the 13-inch black, and they are the series 412. So we'll do the unboxing here, and we'll see how they have it packaged in here. Okay, I have some nice directions. Progressive suspension. I'll make sure you follow those directions, especially the target ride length of the shock once you have it mounted. It's important to note that the travel of the shock and the ride of the bike is going to be dependent on the preload adjustment of the shock. There is a preload setting once you and the passenger and all of your gear are on the bike. Progressive does provide a setting and a length from the center line of each shock bolt to the center line, and then make sure that you have your spring preload adjusted accordingly. So this says it's washers, spacers, Harley Davidson mounting kit, 4 shouldered sleeves, 4 inner 3/8 sleeves, 1/2-inch washers, etc. Haven't opened that up yet, but they have that packaged here. Also a little package of grease that I'm assuming that goes with the bushings. Then we get down here to the shocks themselves. So as you can see, the very nice finish on the shock. The paint looks to be in very nice shape. So I have the part number on there. And I'd say the fit and finish looks pretty nice. Pretty nice. So here is where you're going to make your adjustment. Right here, as you can see, this is stepped to the maximum. So as you turn this, it is going to shorten the travel and change the length of the shock and the amount of travel. And it's also going to load this spring, shortening it, making it a more firmer ride. So there's the other one. Each of those fit both sides, and that's what I was looking for, is the adjustment tool. So this adjustment tool is going to fit into, once it's on the bike, you're going to see how this groove right here fits into that sleeve around the shock, and you'll be able to turn this sleeve around to adjust the step up on where you need it for your ride height and such. So great, that's the unboxing. Now we're going to get to work. We're going to pull the we're going to go ahead and pull off the saddlebags and get the old factory air shocks off. I'm really excited about looking forward to the ride that these shocks are going to provide. Ran about $260–270 for the pair of these. It was much cheaper than the 944 series. I just couldn't swing the $600 or $700 on that 944 series shock, and I read really good reviews on the series 412, which is what these are. And I think what I'm going to find is I'll be pleasantly surprised as long as my travel length is set up properly and the spring preload is set up properly. So we get the camera set up over by the bike and we'll get working. Alright, my bike has these screw-in mounts here for the saddlebags. So you just unscrew these. It's kind of like an anti-theft mechanism, so somebody just can't pop your saddlebags off here. So we just unscrew these. And we're just going to repeat the process for the left side. One thing I want to mention to you is that it's important that you bleed off any air that's in the air shocks before you go and remove them. It's going to make removal a lot easier, and also it's going to help prevent any issues with that shock trying to get away from you or causing any injury. Also would be helpful if you have a motorcycle jack, that you would place that under the bike to hold it in an upright position, and then that'll make installation a lot easier because you can adjust the jack then at that point and go forward with your installation of your new shock. What you have is 11/16 on the top and a 3/4 inch nut on the bottom. Now I have placed my motorcycle jack under the bike here, just to hold up, try to keep her level. I'm going to show you how to do one side, and then we'll get the other side done. Guess I need to put some more pressure on that jack. Don't want to damage the threads on it. Okay. I've already disconnected your air line here. I'm not going to remove the air line, I'm just going to wire tie it up out of the way. Going to have a nut up inside of your fender. I think it's 11/16. We're going to find out. Okay, it's 9/16. What that nut is. 11/16 bolt head, 9/16 nut. So this is what we got. It's actually not a nut. Now I haven't done this before, so you can see this mounts on the bike like that. You can see that that has a bolt, and it's a 9/16 bolt that fits in there from the fender side. Alright, you're going to need to consult your directions here. These are the directions that came with the bushing and washer kit. So for my model, it's a 95 FLH. So use one number 1 sleeve and one number 3 washer for each shock eye. Place the shouldered sleeve with the washer in towards the motorcycle. This offsets the shock outward. All parts are not used on every model. You may have extra unused parts. Good to know. So we will fit that accordingly. So just take your time. It's a little bit of a little tricky to get this bolt up inside the fender well. But what you're looking at is you're going to place the, according to this Progressive, you're going to place the bushings with the shouldered side in towards the motorcycle. So our bolt is going to go in like that on the top. Just going to set it in here so I don't have to hold the shock too. So just take your bolt up inside the fender, and you have to feel for the hole because you can't see. You'll feel it once it goes in, so you can just kind of get a so I think I'm going to disconnect the other shock and I'll come back to this side. Alright, so that's really what I needed to do, was get the other side shock off so that the suspension could relax enough. What I have now, I got both the upper and the lower started, and you have to be very careful to get the alignment correct between the shock and the bolt itself. So we're just going to snug these up. I do have a torque wrench. From what I understand, the proper torque is 40 foot-pounds. So it should go in nice and easy up until the point that you get them seated. Okay. Don't want to tighten them up too much till we get the proper torque on them. You need to have a good torque wrench. I'm going to set it to 44 foot-pounds. The other angle here. There you go, 40 foot-pounds. Change our socket to 3/4 of an inch. $40 foot-pounds. Actually, I got her set to about 45. And your shock is installed. I'm just going to use a wire tie and hold this. I might use the one that's there, but I'll probably have to throw another one on. So what I had mentioned to you before is that you need to measure from the center line here. So just imagine there's a line going straight across that bolt hole, and then do the same down here. Get your rider, get your passenger, get your gear on there, and for this shock, the 13-inch shock, Progressive says you need 11 3/4 of an inch distance from center line to center line, from center of the bolt to the center of the bolt. Once the weight is down on the motorcycle, what that'll do is allow you the maximum amount of travel up and down. This particular shock, Progressive told me, has 3.8 inches of travel. So the 11 3/4 is going to place that shock right in the middle of that travel, so you're going to get maximum comfort without bottoming out. So once I get the other side on, I will wait for my rider, get our gear on, we'll sit on it, and I'll have an assistant measure, and then we'll make any adjustments here if need be with our wrench. But essentially that is how you get your shocks on, how you take the old ones off, how you get the new ones on a 1995 Ultra Glide Classic. So what I did here was I took a standard piece of coat hanger and I bent it accordingly, and for my particular shock, my particular application, Progressive recommends 11 3/4 of an inch center line to center line. So what I did was I just took this and I bent it to be exactly 11 3/4 of an inch. You might say, well, that's not exactly 11 3/4. So I just started at the 1. Felt like there was too much leeway if I started it up here and used the tip as the starting guide, but you can still see that if I did it that way, it was 11 3/4 of an inch. But I just felt like 11 3/4 of an inch was better measured this way. All right. So what I did here, you can see that the progressive shocks have been installed. I don't have the rider and the passenger on there, obviously, but I wanted to show you how I measured it. And what I did was I took a spot of a Sharpie, I put it right there on the center line of the bolt, and I did the same. Let's see if I can get down in here with it. I did the same thing for the lower bolt. So once I had my rider and the passenger on there, I had an assistant measure. So I just placed that point right there, and I replaced the point right up here. Obviously, when you have some the rider and the passenger on here, it's going to sink down in, shock's going to settle, the spring's going to settle, and that's going to move that black dot down towards that other point. And I felt like this was the easiest way to do it, least expensive way to do it. That way we could get an accurate measurement, and then once we had that accurate measurement, we could go ahead and turn the shock adjustment, the shock preload adjustment, and I'll show you how that's done here now. What I have is a tool that Progressive sent that adjusts the shocks and the spring preload tension. I'm going to show you how that fits on here. It's very easy to do. The only downside really is that you have to remove the saddlebags to make this adjustment and to make it properly. So that, you know, if it's worth the several $100s, I'm sure that the shock valving in the 944 series is probably a little bit better. But what I also know is you can make a hand adjustment on that, and that will adjust your spring preload on those particular shocks. So we should be able to see right here the grooves on which the wrench fits onto, and you should also be able to see, you can tell right here, and then here's our steps that we had talked about before. Okay, now mine have already been adjusted, but I'm just going to show you this so that you can see that. And you can see how those steps go down or go up based on the amount of load that's on the bike when you make this adjustment. So for intent and purposes, I'm just going to show you how this wrench fits on here. And then I am going to make one click adjustment. So you would fit that wrench into that groove right there, hold it around there, and then you would pull it either direction. So how I'm going to make this adjustment is I'm going to make it from the back side here. I'm going to find my hole, and there it is. And then I'm going to twist it one time, and then you can see that it has gone down to the next step. So that would say that that's step 4. I was at step 5 previously. If you need to tighten it up, you would just put your wrench on this side, take the tension back over, and then there's your adjustment. It's pretty easy to do. And we took the bike out for a ride last night. It is amazing the amount of difference. So what I would say is, all intent and purposes, that the Progressive Suspension Series 412s, they've been incredible. We took them out last night. Nice long ride, highway speeds, country roads, 40 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. I was really amazed at how much the bike felt stable. The huge improvement over the stability of the bike at highway speed. I was really surprised. My wife, she was pleasantly surprised when we hit some of those jolting bumps in the road, you know, the ones that you can't avoid. We used to go down some of the roads that are around our house where we live, and we found that I had to give her a little bit of a warning if I saw a big bump coming or something like that. And I think that what these shocks have allowed us to do is continue to carry on a conversation without necessarily having to worry about the real big bumps. I'm not going to say that you're not going to get jolted at going over some of the, a big manhole cover or something like that, but a lot of the bridge abutments, the roads that we have typically ridden around in our area, we kind of know where those bumps are. We know how they feel. We know how they used to feel with the old shocks. And it has just been an absolutely amazing difference. So from our experience, I would say that the progressive shocks, especially these 412 series that we purchased, they are a very good bang for the buck. And I would also say that they've lived up to the hype. So again, we adjusted our preload according to the instructions, and we received extremely good outcome with these shocks. I would strongly encourage you to purchase these. I'll put a link to the shocks in the description. And I would also ask that you would subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button, ring that bell there at the bottom. I'll keep trying to bring you the good content, things that I think are applicable to everyday life. This is Mark from What Comes Next.